Well, after much anticipation, Riverdale has finally premiered, but the real question is, can the Archie gang fit into modern society? Hey guys, it's coming over the series premiere of the highly anticipated CW show Riverdale. This is Season 1, Episode 1, Chapter 1, The River's Edge. And guys, I was understandably hyped for this show. I think ever since they were in talks to do a show like this, I was, to say the least, interested in this show. But as I saw promos, I thought it was very interesting what they were going to do. And I don't know if you guys know, but I actually am a fan of Archie comics. I know I say I'm not an avid comic book reader, and, you know, truthfully, I'm not. I really do not read a ton of comics. But back in my day, I did read my fair share of Archie comics. There's a supermarket fairly close to me that carried them, and I used to get an Archie comic every single time I went there, and I actually have a bunch of them, and I read them, you know, I wouldn't say religiously, but I read them pretty much on a deal, not like a weekly basis, and I definitely really did love the Archie comics overall, and I was pretty fearful about this show, because the Archie comics, as you know, they don't take place in modern times, they take place in like the 60s, so I really didn't know how this was gonna work, and the real question is, does Riverdale work overall? Yes, Riverdale, for the most part, I really did love the show, at least for right now. This is working, I have to say. I think they did a really good job with getting us to know these characters, taking their time with this pilot, and, you know, if anything, really taking their time to flesh out these characters as best they could, not rushing the story, and showing that it's not as ultra dark as they promised it to be. There's a lot of fun in this first episode, which is something the show didn't really promise us. You know, I know they teased as this gritty, this gritty version of Archie, and it definitely is a little bit darker, but it definitely is still quite fun, and let's just get into it, because I definitely do want to get into it, because I really did love this first episode overall. It's not perfect. There are definitely significant problems with the show that I am going to get into, but I do want to talk about it. And we start off and we hear a narrator who we eventually realize is Jughead, and he's explaining that Riverdale is like most small towns, seemingly idyllic, but with secrets. You know, it really seems like there's nothing wrong with it, but it does have its fair share of secrets. And the voice explains that the story really begins with what the Blossoms twins did this summer. And we see Jason and Cheryl Blossom, they're driving out to Sweetwater River for a boat ride, which ended with Scoutmaster Dilton Doily finding a soaked and sobbing Cheryl by the river's edge, whispering her brother's name, and this is the kind of slow pacing I'm talking about. For the first 6 minutes, we don't meet any main characters. The first 6 minutes is us learning everything about the Blossoms and what led up to their death, and it's a really good way of getting us into this story. This is something that the original Archie comics had, and immediately this stands out from the original comics, and they did a very good job of getting us into the story, and not just comparing it to, you know, previous comics. So a week later, the voice tells us that Jason's death was ruled as an accident and the family buried an empty casket. Cheryl told everyone that Jason had fallen out of the boat trying to recover something she dropped, capsizing it and drowning, which immediately is very suspicious. The way that she is doing whatever she can to cover up his death, kind of making us think maybe she had a hand in it, which we'll get into. But the town was still dealing with the tragedy when the next mystery came to town, and basically we now get us into our official story, where we see Veronica and Hermione Lodge. They're returning to Hermione's hometown because apparently the pair have no access to Hiram Lodge's money for whatever reason. Now, we know there's definitely something going on with them, but Hermione tells Smithers, who greets them, that she wants out one of Pop Tate's cheeseburgers, so you get the sense that they've been here before, and definitely they're very used to the town, but things have definitely changed since they've been there. And what I really loved about this first episode is that while Archie is our main character of the show, this episode, Archie's not the main character. Betty and Veronica are very much our main characters of this first episode, and I really like that, I have to say. It's a good way of leading us into the show, getting us into these characters, and they, especially with Betty, they really take the time to explore her, because we meet Betty Cooper, and she's changing while Kevin Keller sits on her bed, trying to encourage her to confess her feelings to Archie, who Kevin sees through the window, says Archie got hot over the summer, and at Pops, Betty shares a story with Archie about praise she got from Toni Morrison during her recent internship, and Morrison told her that one summer can change everything, and Archie agrees, saying that his life has changed too, and he realized that this summer that he wants to make music. This is something that he wants to do. And through this scene, we learn a lot about Betty and Archie, just who they are, that they're very good friends, and I really like that. And when Betty starts talking to Archie about their friendship, building to talking about their potential relationship, she shut down immediately when Veronica comes into the picture. And Veronica, though Betty is very good at conversation, Veronica is just so intriguing. Immediately, Archie sees her, and he's interested not just because of her looks, but the way that she presents herself. You know, this is someone who does a great job of letting her voice be heard and being the leader of a conversation. She's just not nearly as shy and insecure about herself as Betty is. We get into why she's so insecure a little bit later, but she arrives to get her mother's order, introduce herself to Archie and Betty, and she introduced herself as new to town from New York, and admits she's very nervous about starting at Riverdale tomorrow, and it turns out that Betty is the one who's actually me guiding Veronica through the school the next day, and Archie invites her to sit with them, but Veronica declines. And at this point, I was a little bit worried that we're going to get into a love triangle, which, you know, so to speak, we definitely are, but the show does a very good job at going against what our preconceived expectations are, because Betty sees her, thinks that Veronica's just going to be bitchy, but we really get to know these characters in a way that we don't think we're going to, and that's something I think this episode did really well, is really defy our expectations, I have to say. So at home, Archie tells his dad that he can't work at the construction company this afternoon because he has to go to football tryouts, and we know that obviously he's interested in music, but we don't really know if he actually is trying out for the football team or what the whole deal is there. But in a room, we see Alice Cooper, who is going to be one of our main antagonists of the show, and already is one of the most interesting arcs going on, because this gives Betty a much more interesting of a character, because you look at Betty, and yeah, she's a good-looking girl and things like that, but there's a lot more to her than that. Basically, she lectures Betty about keeping focused on school and making sure her life doesn't fall apart like her sisters did, and she says she needs Betty to be smart and stay focused and remember to take her Adderall. So you can tell that Alice is extremely critical of Betty. She expects way too much out of her, and she also expects for perfection, and that's something that haunts Betty throughout this entire episode, the struggle to be perfectionist and to not have any flaws, or to mask her flaws as best as she can, which is something that Betty greatly struggles with throughout this entire episode, and I thought was very well handled. But at school, Reggie Mansell approaches Archie to ask how he got so jacked over the summer, and when Archie tells him it's from working construction, he asks whether Archie hooked up with any bored housewives over the summer, and Archie walks away. We'll get back into that in a second, but Betty starts walking Veronica through the school, and Veronica's very snarky and dismissive about the school, but she's not bitchy. In fact, Veronica and Betty very quickly become friends, and that's something I did like about this episode, is the way that these two actually became friends rather than just become enemies, because other shows, these two would immediately hate each other, but they really don't in this episode, I have to say. They really do get to know each other, and I don't know if they're going to be a little bit more antagonistic throughout the show. Right now, at least, they seem to be on board with each other, but Kevin then comes out and gives her the skinny on the town. Veronica asks him to be her gay best friend, but quickly he upsets her by asking about her dad, and she asks if everyone in town knows, and when there's no answer, she realizes the answer is yes and gets frustrated. So definitely something happened with her dad that we don't really know about, and I did definitely read the comics, I just don't really remember. It's been a while since I read an Archie comic, so I don't really remember what happened with her dad, but definitely that's something I'm interested in getting into. And then this was also very interesting, because one of the things I was most interested in seeing is, you know, the Archie universe is so expansive. There's so many different characters. How are they going to handle Josie and the Pussycats? And I think for the most part they handled it pretty well. I mean, they're rehearsing when Archie comes to ask her for some help with his music. Melody and Valerie both look interested in Archie, but Josie tells him in no uncertain terms to get lost. And we don't see a ton of Josie in this episode. We see maybe 2 scenes of her, and the other scenes kind of just her and her band singing. So we don't really get to know much of who she is, but we definitely get the sense that she's really not interested in Archie. She's very focused on her music, and her band clearly is falling for Archie, but she's not, and that's something I am definitely interested in getting into, is who really is Josie as a character. And right now, I do like that Josie and the Pussycats is a school band. You know, if this was in modern times, I'm pretty sure this is how Josie and the Pussycats would be. So in another hallway, Veronica asks Betty if she's dating Archie, as she clearly is interested in him, and Kevin quickly tells her that they're not, but they are in fact endgame, and he tells Veronica that the upcoming dance might be canceled on account of the tragedy that happened with Jason. They might not, it really might not work out in the way they wanted it to, and they might just make it more of a benefit type concert. So there definitely is doubt within this. Then we get introduced to the character who is mostly the main problem with this show. We meet Cheryl Blossom, who speaks to the school, says that her brother wouldn't want them to mourn him, but to celebrate his too short life by moving on with theirs. And while she's talking, Archie's eyes catch on the music teacher, Geraldine Grundy, and it's revealed the two had an affair over the summer. I'm not sure why this is here, really. I'm going to get into that a little bit later, but that definitely is sort of troublesome. But Archie takes Miss Grundy down in the hallway, asks her to talk about music, but she tells him to make an appointment during office hours, so we can tell that definitely there's more to it than just the affair. But at Andrew's construction, Archie's father, Fred, is accosted by Hermione, who wants a job, and she reveals the two used to be close and actually even dated before she met Hiram, and Fred tells her that he would like to help, but since her husband's on trial for fraud and embezzlement, he can't offer her a job doing his finances, the one that he's hiring for, and that she came for. So now we know what's going on with Hiram, that he is in fact on trial for what he did, and basically, unfortunately, because that she's kind of unhireable right now, which is very sad to see and definitely makes us feel bad for Hermione. That's something I did like, is that Hermione's not a villain. We can tell there definitely is a lot of struggles that she has, and this really gets us to care for her, and I definitely thought they did a good job with that. So at lunchtime, Kevin and Betty are listening to one of Archie's songs, and Veronica comes to them, says it's great. She admits she expected people to be more interested in her scandal, but Kevin tells her that she ordinarily would if not for Jason and Cheryl. If this was any other day and Jason had not been murdered, then yeah, all they would have been talking about is, what's going on with Hiram, but, it's really kind of an afterthought in their minds. But Archie excused himself for his meeting with Grundy. Cheryl comes and invites Veronica to try out for cheerleading. Veronica then invites Betty along, and after Cheryl leaves, Betty says that she tried out last year, but Cheryl tore her down, and Veronica offers to help her prepare. And again, I like the way that these two are friends. I like that they're not, at each other's throats the entire episode. It just gives us more of a reason to like their characters, and it makes them more likable in general before probably, the more serious stuff starts to come out. Because, like I said, this episode is definitely serious, but it's definitely, I think, a little more lighthearted than some of the other episodes will be. But in her office later, Archie's playing music for Grundy. She's impressed, but still doesn't want to help him with an independent study because she doesn't want to be alone with him and potentially repeat mistakes. As we know, they had an affair. He presses, saying that he needs to be able to talk to her about what they heard on July 4th, which was a gunshot early in the morning by the river. She tells him that they heard fireworks and that even if it was a gunshot, they couldn't explain why they were together at 6 a.m. on the riverbank. And she tells him that they need to live with not saying anything, that he should pursue his music without her. So I'm not entirely sure where this storyline's going to go. I'm not exactly happy with it, but maybe this will take a different direction, I think. Right now, it is probably one of the weaker storylines in the show by far. So Betty and Veronica then do their cheerleading tryouts, and Cheryl is very unimpressed, to say the least, especially when Veronica tries to get some attention by kissing Betty, which Cheryl informs them has been shocking for about 20 years, and she goes in this long tangent about she tries to goad Betty into a confrontation by bringing up Betty's sister, who had a nervous breakdown after her breakup with Jason. So now we know why Betty's mother is kind of really critical, because it's clear that her sister wasn't perfect, and she tells Betty she's not in the squad, but Veronica is, which, again, that was very interesting. I think it's just because Veronica exudes more confidence, and she just seems like she knows more of what she's doing, and Veronica, meanwhile, goes completely off on Cheryl, and this was pretty awesome, but basically she tells her that essentially that she used to be as awful as Cheryl is, and eventually she'll be knocked off her pedestal, maybe now by Veronica, that she is going to be the one to take over, because it's clear that Cheryl is like the queen bee of the school right now, and that she's the one that, is very much the socialite, and everyone loves her, and things like that, but I like that Veronica really gave her this harsh reality check that, look, it's not going to be this way forever. You may be popular now, but you're not going to be popular forever. And I think that's something that definitely mentioned seeing between Veronica and Cheryl that I definitely did like seeing here. But on the football field, the coach offers Archie Jason's old jersey and number. He wants Archie, a sophomore, to step up to varsity because I guess he's just that good. But when Archie starts to balk, mentioning his dad's company, the coach has no patience for it and tells Archie to sleep on it because we know that, definitely he's been involved with his dad's company, and, clearly he doesn't have much time for football, so that was definitely kind of sad to see. And I like this, what Archie's going through in this episode. There's a lot of things that Archie wants to do, but he doesn't really know how to do them. He kind of just, knows he wants to do them, but he doesn't really know if he has the time and effort to really, put his time into this, and I like that struggle throughout the episode. That's a very realistic struggle that teens go through, and I like the way they did that. But in the girls' locker room, we get this great scene with Betty and Veronica, where Betty helps Veronica into her cheerleading outfits, and the pair wear their uniforms on the walk home. Veronica explains she used to be as bad as Cheryl, but after her father's disgrace, she realized how entitled and awful her family really was, and she decided that moving to Riverdale actually gave her a fresh start, and she was going to take it. And Betty admits that Polly was really into Jason, and Jason really was not interested in Polly. And during the relationship, Alice turned on Polly, distancing herself from her. Jason hurt Polly, Betty says, but it was her mom that broke her. So again, you can tell that Betty's life really hasn't been that great, and I like the way that Veronica's kind of healing her and kind of being like, we all have terrible lives, but we need to move on, and I like that we're seeing that Veronica is a better person, that she definitely has been, very experienced, and she's gone through many changes, and again, this relationship is just so well handled. It probably is one of my favorite parts of the entire episode, is their relationship. It really just strengthened the show overall. So Archie's walking past when Veronica calls him over and essentially forces Betty to ask him to the dance, because she knows that Betty really wants to, but she also invites Archie to come with both of them, because she doesn't want to be able to choose, saying that Veronica should have a date, even if it's just a friend. And I like the way that Betty was the one to goad him into doing that. It wasn't Veronica saying, oh, you have to go with me. Betty did it because she feels, Veronica's the new girl. They need to make her feel welcome. She knows Veronica likes Archie. Why not just take both of them? And Archie tries to decline, but Veronica won't have any of it, talks him into going, and I like that. I like that they were the ones that told Archie to go. This wasn't Archie asking them. They didn't let him choose. Again, I thought that was very interesting. But at home, Betty's mother comes into her room, confronts her about being a cheerleader, but Betty's having none of it. She's happy with what she's doing. She's made a life of herself, and she's saying that she spends so much of her life trying to be perfect for everyone else that she deserves some things for herself. Her mom can't control her life. Even if she wants to, she can't really do that, and she needs to understand that, her daughter's gonna make a life for herself, and her daughter's allowed to do things, on her own. That's part of being a teenager, is learning to have independence, and that's something that Betty is really learning to do, and I like the way she already is very much, is very much disregarding her mother and very much telling her, look, you can't tell me what to do. I like the direction this is going, and she tells her mom she's going to buy a dress, but she can go to the dance with Archie and Veronica, and then storms out, and Alice is shocked. She's never seen this kind of confidence and this kind of defense from Betty. Betty's always kind of just stood there and taken it, and for once she's actually, giving Alice a reality check, and I like that. But at Hermione's apartment, she returns home to the news that her car service found her missing bag, and after Smithers leaves, she opens a bag with Hiram's monogram on it, and it's full of money, and she asks what he's done. So again, we know there's definitely something going on there with some with embezzlement, and definitely interested in getting into that, but Fred comes to Archie asking him what's going on since the football coach called him and said that Archie had bailed on varsity football to work for his dad, and he asks Archie who he was lying to since he told both men that he couldn't do what they wanted to be with the other, and Archie admits that he changed over the summer and no longer wants his dad's company. He wants no part of it, and that he wants to pursue music. He knows that this is something that he really wants to do, and his father ultimately tells him that he doesn't care about football, and he has no interest in forcing Archie to work at a construction company, but that Archie needs to be confident enough in his decisions that he doesn't have to lie to his dad. And that's true. Like I said, Archie doesn't really know how to do things. He thought this was something that Fred really cared about, when in reality, Fred doesn't really care that much. He wants Archie to make decisions that work for him, and things that he knows that Archie really wants to do. But he doesn't have that confidence to, just tell his dad, this is what I want to do, because I think in general, Archie doesn't really know what he wants to do. He has all these different ideas, and right now he wants to be an artist, but again, we don't know if it's going to change, and I can very much see him struggling with that throughout the season, which I'm definitely interested in getting into. So at the dance, Betty and Veronica are asking Archie what he's going to decide about football, and Archie ultimately excused himself to talk to Grundy again, telling her he needs her help, and that if she ever helps him, she helps him promise to never tell anyone about July 4th, she breaks, agreeing to set the study up, and abruptly walks away from him. Elsewhere, Kevin tells Betty that he's been propositioned by Moose, and who basically is some guy that he likes, and On stage, Cheryl introduces the entertainment. Josie and the Pussycats who are playing a song for Jason, and it's a very questionable song that they're dancing to. Again, there's a lot of undertones with Cheryl and Jason. She constantly refers to Jason as her soulmates. We'll get back in that when we talk about her, but during the song, Archie tells Betty that he's going to do his independent study in the mornings, football after school, and work with his dad on the weekends. And again, that's a lot for one kid to do. You know, top that all off with homework and a social life. I mean, that really is a lot to handle. But Betty finally comes clean to Archie about her feelings for him. I like the way that she told him straight out, and he's blindsided and doesn't know what to say. And when their body language gets awkward, Cheryl tells two of her minions to make sure they and Veronica all come to her after party. And again, Cheryl just wants to make everyone's lives a living hell, and she sets up a game of 7 Minutes in Heaven and gets Archie and Veronica into the closet together. This scene was very unnecessary, in my opinion. I don't really think we needed this scene in here. I mean, I get what they were trying to do, but the two talk harmlessly for a while. It eventually escalates to a kiss, and shortly after they kiss, they exit the closet to find that Betty spiraled and fled, in Cheryl's words, probably because she just didn't know what to do. I mean, she just told Archie that she loved him. She's not just going to say she liked him and then go have sex. That's just not how it's going to work, and Archie wants to go with Veronica and tries to find Betty, but she tells him that that's the last thing that Betty wants and that they messed up. That Betty doesn't want him to come back for her. Betty, needs to go on her own. She heads home, spends some time with her mom, who sees something is wrong and asks her about it. So she knows that definitely something's going on with Hermione, and she definitely does not exactly trust her. But Archie then heads to Pop's to look for Betty, but instead finds Jughead. And Jughead is actually the one who was narrating the episode, who's revealed to be the narratorial voice. It was kind of cool the way they did that, and he's working on a noir novel about Jason Blossom. So that is why we have the narration, because he's actually writing a novel about Jason. And Jughead then asks Archie whether being on the varsity team means he's Mr. Popular now, and Archie says no, that he thinks he lost his best friend tonight. Jughead tells him to just talk to Betty. That would go a long way, and that it would have gone a long way with Jughead too. And I like the direction they're going with Jughead and Archie. We don't know a ton about Jughead right now, but at least we got to see a little bit of him. He's one of the most popular characters of the show. He's one of the most interesting by far. I don't exactly know where they're taking him, but I like that they did at least show a little bit of him, and I thought that was pretty well done. But when he gets home, he finds Betty waiting outside her house. She asks him again if he loves her. He tells her yes, but that he can't give her the answer that she wants. He doesn't love her like a boyfriend. He's not capable of that right now. He loves her like a friend, and he says that she's too perfect, and he'll never be good enough for her. Remember that line, that she's too perfect. To him, that's a compliment, but to her, it's kind of scarring her, and we'll get into why. But she turns away from him, goes inside, and very interesting stuff there. But at the river's edge, Kevin and Moose are about to start skinny dipping together when Kevin trips, sees what tripped him up. It's actually Jason's body with a bullet hole in his forehead. So yes, the gunshot that Archie and Grunwald most likely heard was Jason's death, which is pretty crazy to think about. But by morning, Jughead explains everyone will be talking about it. The town will have fundamentally changed, and on Monday, he said the autopsy would take place, and on Tuesday, halfway through 5th period, the first arrest would be made, and that perfectly sets us up into what the show is really going to be, and that is the way this episode ends. Really great stuff overall, but let's just get in this episode where I think we're going to go from here. Overall, guys, I really did enjoy this premiere, and there's a lot of things that really do help out the show, and one of the things that surprisingly was very impressed by was the cast. Because I have to say, when it comes to the cast for the show, they really did do a great job in finding actors that, aren't very well known, but are definitely very talented and actually do match their counterparts quite well. Particularly KJ Apa as Archie, who, yes, definitely is a lot more good-looking than the original Archie was, because I will admit, he definitely is a handsome dude and things like that, and you can definitely tell why everyone finds him very attractive. But he definitely still has that naivety that Archie really had, and that struggle with really finding how to manage things, and that awkwardness that he had, because Archie is definitely an awkward character, and I do think that he's a little bit more open in this show, but he is still a bit awkward. I mean, you can tell that he's really juggling through a lot of things. He really is trying to, he's in between two girls, and he really doesn't know who he likes more. He doesn't really know how to express his feelings for either one. We saw that with Betty, where he didn't really know how to say how he felt about her, and with Veronica, when he kind of just shut her down and went looking for Betty. So we really don't know which one he cares about more, and I like that. I think it really keeps us guessing very well. But he also is really trying to struggle this balance with, writing and performing music, and also football, what does Archie really want to do? What is the thing that he really is interested in? That's something I'm definitely very interested in. They took a character that could have been, I think, very watered down and very sanitized and just really silly and not really be much of a character and made him a lot more. I really loved with him in his first episode. Like I said, he really was not the main character's first episode, though, and that's something I actually was very impressed by, even though he is the main character of this show. By far, the two standouts of this first episode were Lil Reinhardt as Betty and Camila Mendez as Veronica. But let's first talk about Lily Reinhardt, who I think is perfectly casted as Betty. She by far was a standout of this entire show. In my opinion, I think she stole pretty much everything that she was in. And what I really love about Betty really is her struggle with perfection. We can tell throughout this entire show that she has been someone who has been kind of outspoken and someone who is very wholesome and very much like a girl next door type girl. But she's also someone who does definitely have a backbone and definitely does have edge to her that she really didn't know she had before. And you can tell she's really struggling with her feelings for Archie, which I really did love. But I love the way that Betty is starting to come out of her shell. She's starting to realize that she needs to be a lot more known and what she needs to do for herself. She's very much focusing on self-advocacy, and I really do like that about her characters, that she really is advocating for herself. She's not just listening to her mother. She's tired of being that person that her mother wants her to be, the perfect daughter, being as good as her sister. She's tired of it, and I like the way she's really relying on Veronica. And Camila Mendez as well does a very good job making Veronica not just a bitch, because Veronica isn't a bitch in this show. We could tell that she was in the past, but she's really changed and she's really realized, who she really wants to be and how she can be nice to other people. And I like the friendship that she really did strike up with Betty. Their chemistry in general really does elevate the show. I think those two work very well together. And I especially love the scene where she gave Cheryl a reality check. I thought that was definitely very well done. I'm very interested in seeing where her character is going to go. I hope we get more flashbacks in there because there's clearly a lot going on with her and her family, and them definitely were the stands of this episode. They both were fantastic. Now, someone who I'm very surprised to see in this show, because I haven't seen him act in years, is Cole Sprouse as Jughead. Now, we barely saw him in this first episode, but it was really cool to see him back in this show. I really love what he did here. I thought overall he definitely was a pretty good character, and I did hear even though Jughead is not going to be asexual, he is going to struggle with sexuality throughout the show, which it's very hard to get that right, so I really hope this show handles it in a very earnest way. It seems that they're doing it well so far. I mean, we haven't really gotten into that aspect, but if you guys don't know, spoiler alert, I think most people know this if you know the Archie series, Jughead's asexual, and the show isn't really going to do that. They're going to take him into a different direction, but Sprouse is doing what he can to try to retain some of that storyline, so I'm hoping they find a way to keep some of that, because it's the most compelling aspect of Jughead's character, and I'm hoping to see where they go with that, because that's going to be very interesting. I think the parents as well, they were fine. I don't really have a ton to say. Marisol Nichols was pretty great as Veronica's mother. I like what she did on the show, but particularly Madchen Amick really stood out as Alice, who you really are hating this character. I mean, this is someone who is Betty's mother, and you're really supposed to hate her. You can understand why she expects so much out of Betty, but she really expects way too much out of her daughter, and you really don't like her most of the time. I think she did a really good job at instilling fear in Betty, but also kind of being outsmarted by her. I really am liking where her character's going. I'm hoping we get more into her. And then Archie's father as well, I thought was very interesting. It's clear that him and Hermione do have a past. That's something I'm definitely interested in getting into, is seeing these three characters, who they really are, and that's something I think they did a very good job with in this first episode, is really giving us intrigue, giving us a lot to work with, but not telling us too much, which is something that a lot of shows do too much nowadays, and this show really didn't do. However, by far the biggest problem with the show for me is Madeline Pesh as Cheryl Blossom. Now, the actress is fine. I think she, for the most part, does a good job of what she has to do. The problem with this show is that the rest of the show is very, I wouldn't say watered down, that's not the word, but it feels very real. It feels like these are taking the Archie characters who, were in the 60s and had all these silly things to them and making them more real. Veronica feels real, Betty feels real, Archie feels real, the parents feel real. Cheryl Blossom does not feel real. Cheryl Blossom, to me, just feels like every mean girl in a movie or TV show ever, who clearly is just very psychopathic, honestly. Sociopathic, not psychopath, sociopathic. I don't exactly know where they're going with her. I was hoping that Veronica would kind of take her under her wing and get her to turn around, but you know there's definitely more going on with her. You know, especially with her and Jason, they definitely had some sort of weird relationship. Like I said, she constantly refers to him as her soulmate, and the way that she kind of hints at incest between those two is something I'm not very interested in getting into, and I do think that she was way too over the top at points. I think they gave her a little bit too much hammy dialogue, and it doesn't really go with the rest of the show. Her stuff just feels a little bit cheesy and a little bit just too Disney Channel, honestly. The rest of the show feels very realistic, and her stuff just doesn't, and it doesn't mesh well with the rest of the show. And if Cheryl Blossom wasn't in this show, I do think the show would be a little bit better. I definitely would have gone a little bit higher with my grade for this episode, but because of Cheryl Blossom, she did kind of ruin a lot of this episode for me. Maybe she'll get better. It's just right now, she's definitely annoying me, and not in the sense where I, you know, love to hate her. I'm just kind of disliking her very much right now. I hope they take her into a much different direction than just the mean girl. I want them to expand her character more. They've expanded 3 characters already so well that hopefully they do that very well with Madeline Pesh, but right now I'm just not getting that sense they're going to do that with Cheryl as a character. However, the directing and the writing on this show really is fantastic. They did a very good job with it overall. And like I said, what I really love about the directing is that this show is promoted to be an ultra-dark Archie. And like I said, it is definitely realistic. It definitely feels slightly darker and less cartoony. And that makes sense. You know, it's a live-action show. It's not a cartoon. And it feels very real. But it also feels like if you were to take these characters and put them in this setting, this is how they would be. They still have the quirks to them. They still act like they should, and I was happy about that. You could tell they're definitely paying respect to the comics, and, you know, the comics got really zany after a while and ridiculous, and I like that right now. They're keeping it pretty simple. I like that so far, and I think the tone was very well executed. The mystery aspect as well, you definitely do get that sense. There were some very creepy moments throughout the episode. I like that we got a mystery going on here, but it also is a teen drama show, and it never feels like it's messy in that sense. I thought, for the most part, the tone worked really, really well. I definitely really loved the way it was done. I had a lot of fun with this show as well. There were a lot of really fun moments, and I thought all that was very well executed in the way they did the directing. The writing as well, I really do love the writing in this show. I think the writing was pretty much very well handled, especially with them taking characters that could have easily been very generic and quite boring. You know, you have, oh, just, you know, Betty could have just been the girl next door, Veronica could have just been the new girl, or, you know, Archie could have just been the attractive redhead, but there, you know, that guy, that girls find attractive, but there's a lot more to these characters than that, and I already love that they're diving deep into these characters. You can tell they really do want us to like these characters. They want us to get on board with them. They want us to see who they really are, and because this isn't a comic book where, you know, they have to just pick silly stories, they can really structure it around those characters, and they're doing a very good job with that so far. I really like that, and I like that the mystery aspect wasn't too heavy-handed in this first episode. It was there, but it's definitely going to be there more in other episodes, but here, it definitely felt more like this is a get-to-know-the-characters type episode, and I really did like that. I like the way they handled all that, and I like it was a very wise choice not to make Archie the main focus. The main focus was Betty and Veronica, and that was something I was quite surprised by, but I like that they didn't make him the main focus. They made Betty and Veronica the main focus, and it was very well handled in that regard. I love the way that was done, and I love that these characters aren't shallow or dumb. Well, Cheryl's pretty shallow, I will definitely say that, but Betty and Veronica are far from it. They're very strong, they're very superior, and it's not a sexist show, and I really do love the way that was handled. I thought we got there's very strong female characters, but also very strong male characters, and that's something the show seems to have very well, and I really do enjoy that. I think that was very well handled. My only complaints with this show are a few things that I don't really understand. First of all, why do we have this whole arc going on with Archie and Miss Grunwald? It feels like it's just there just to give these two conflict, just to give a reason for him to not be able to pursue music, and I don't like it. I think if Grundy, not Grumwald, Grundy, I just don't like it. I think it's dumb. I think it's really unnecessary. I don't know why it's really there. I mean, I understand that, yeah, they heard a gunshot on July 4th, but it just doesn't do anything. It just kind of makes the show feel like a soap opera, and yeah, there might be some soap stuff in there, but the show feels real, and that really takes a lot of the realism away from it. I really like everything they're doing with Archie's character except for that, and again, the show could get me on board with that. Just right now, I'm not feeling that plot at all. I think it's really dumb what they're doing, and I don't know why they're going in that direction. Nothing about that I'm liking. I think it's really ridiculous what they're doing there, and we don't need an affair plot. I mean, there's already so much going on in the show, and so many things I'm more compelled by, like what's going on with Veronica's family in this embezzlement situation. That is a lot more compelling than why did Archie have an affair with this teacher. It's dumb. I don't know why it's there, but whatever, we'll have to see where that goes. And then the other thing, of course, like I said, is Cheryl. Her stuff just feels very underwritten. It feels like she's just there to be the mean girl, and I'm hoping I'm wrong. I'm hoping they develop her more. One of my favorite movies, as you guys know, is Mean Girls. I think it's a very, well, one of my favorite teen films. Not one of my favorite movies, but one of my favorite teen films is Mean Girls, because they give you a look at Mean Girls, but they also show you why girls are mean and why they bully people and things like that. And I hope that Riverdale does take the time to do that. You know, a girl doesn't just bully to bully. She has reasons why she does it, and I hope the show really does take the time to show who Cheryl really is, like they've done with Betty and Veronica, because she could be a really good character. It's just right now, I think they're just focused way too much on, let's just make her say some cool catchphrase, rather than let's actually make her a real character. She just doesn't feel real to me, and I hope that does change. But other than that, the writing is pretty great. I'm very much into the story, and I'm very interested in seeing where it's going to go, as well as the cinematography here. Cinematography is great. It's very glossy and colorful, and that's something I definitely really love. I love the vibrant colors throughout the show, but it also is dark, particularly in the scenes of the dock. They did a very good job with those scenes. I definitely did like that, and I thought the cinematography really did stick out in the show. It tells us a lot about the characters, and I thought that was very well done. Like having Betty wear white all the time and having Veronica wear black. It's not exactly subtle in what they're trying to do, but definitely shows you who's supposed to be, you know, more on the right side of the tracks and who's on the wrong side. I thought that was also pretty well done. And then the score here I thought was fine. Not really much to say about the score. The editing as well. This episode was a little bit long for CW standards. Without commercials, it's 46 minutes, and I guess they didn't take a ton of commercials, but it definitely did never overstay its welcome. I thought it used the time wisely, and I was very impressed by that overall, so I definitely really did love what they did there. Overall, guys, I really did enjoy the show. I thought this was a very well done first episode. They really got us into these characters pretty well. I'm very much into where we're going to go from here. It's a much different show than currently anything that's on TV. I don't think there's a lot of shows quite like this. I mean, there's definitely teen dramas, but nothing quite like in the lore of this. This has a little bit Gossip Girl, a little bit Twin Peaks. Some people have even said One Tree Hill. I even go as far as to say there's Pretty Little Liars in there. There's a lot of different shows sprinkled throughout this, and I like the way the show is really going against any type of cliche. Could minus Cheryl, it's going against most of the cliches that it really could have, and I really do love the way the show's doing that. Overall, guys, I'm very well compelled into the show. I can't wait to see where it's going to go, and I am going to give this first episode, Riverdale, Season 1, Episode 1, Chapter 1, The River's Edge, a 4 out of 5 or a B+. Guys, if you were not on board with the show, definitely this first episode hopefully does get you on board. I really mentioned the direction that they're going here. It really does seem like the writers are doing what they can to develop these characters. They're trying to pay respects to the comics, definitely getting that sense that they know the kind of show they're writing. They're not trying to make it ultra dark. They're just trying to do a different take on it, appeal to a modern audience, and so far they're doing it pretty well. I'm very interested in seeing where they're going to go. There's so much they can do with the show, and I hope that that potential is realized as good as it was in this first episode, maybe even better, because the show definitely has the opportunity to get even better, and I can't wait to see the way the show hopefully evolves. For Riverdale, let me know what you guys thought of this first episode overall. Loved your thoughts on it. Do you like where the show is headed? Are you interested in seeing Archie in modern day setting? Or is it too drawing for you? I can understand why, if it's too degrading or something like that. I can totally understand if you guys aren't interested in that. But that is it for my review. Hope you guys enjoy it. We'll see you guys in my next video, which will be for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.